So what we're going to do is, like I mentioned, I'm going to a marketing conference back in Boston. Starts on Sunday, and I'm actually leaving tomorrow. I'm going down to Auburn, where my daughter goes to school to watch a football game on Saturday. So anyway, we will not have class next Tuesday. So I'll put a reminder out in the announcements, but we will have it on Thursday. So it'll just be, the one day. But because of that, we're going to start talking about housing today, because housing's a pretty big, pretty deep subject in terms of personal finance. It constitutes usually people's largest investment, and it can be pretty favorable to it. Like we said, it's a lot more fun than having just money or mutual funds or whatever in the bank. A house, property, it can not only be profitable, has some tax benefits with it, but also it's something that you can enjoy. And given the economy, the stock market, everything else, it's more stable. Like we said, it can go up and down, but man, when property prices go down 1% or 2%, it is a huge deal. Whereas in the stock market, things drop 10%, and that's just considered part of the game. So anyway, it's a bit more stable than the rest. Let's get this thing marching. Sometimes this thing doesn't want to advance. So anyway, housing decisions and factors and finances. So we'll try and concentrate on the financial aspects of it. I do hold a real estate license in Alaska. I've gotten inactive. There's a lot of reasons, and some of you may want to get involved in real estate business. It can be hugely profitable in terms of a salesperson type thing, but there's some downsides to it in terms of the people I know who are in it. It's always these, just war stories about just the whatever. My side business deals with selling livestock equipment and horse things and things like that. So my customers are, they're all squared away. They all have enough money to buy this. I never have bounce checks or anything. Everybody's always in a good mood. Real estate, oh my gosh, these friends of mine, one in particular, he's a great guy, and he's retired out of the Army, but man, the stories he comes back with of just the personalities. I was in it. I was associated with a RE/MAX office out in Eagle River, and you can understand sort of the sense of desperation from the salesperson's standpoint. And the thing is too that there's all sorts of real estate laws in Alaska that are particular to Alaska that have kind of evolved due to basically underhanded stuff. Some of the old heads will go, oh yeah, we call ourselves salespersons rather than agents because somebody ripped somebody off and they presented themselves as an agent. And so anyway, even the language that you have to hand these people a pamphlet before you can even speak to them that has all the disclosures in it. You have to, anyway, it's good for the consumers because they have gotten some of the unethical people out of there. But it's the business is tough. The other thing about real estate is most agents that are any good, and it's maybe 5% are the good ones, and they do about 90% of the transactions. There's a lot of people who are kind of like also-ran people that are just sort of in the business but not really doing anything with it, and that constitutes the majority. But anyway, the people who are kind of the movers and shakers, they are generally on full commission. And so in the case of the office I was at, you don't start out the month dead even. You start out the month basically $3,200 in the hole because you're paying for you're basically renting your office space, you're paying your fees, you're paying to be part of that brokerage, to work for a broker and the rest of that. But when you sell something, all that commission comes to you. So that's why you want to be in that situation. But anyway, it's the first of the month, these guys are literally, they got to sell a house or something, or else they're not making money. They've already lost money, and you do that for successive months, and you got to find a new line of work. But anyway, people if you're so that attracts a different sort of people to that sort of lifestyle. Has anybody got a real estate license or had any experience with it? Anyway, And then there's different things. There's I'm not going to tell you which agencies they are, but there are some brokers in town that are just, they do this cold calling and it's high pressure tactics, and it's just nothing I want a part of. The agency I worked with, or the broker, they were very, very low key and good people to work for, very serious, very competent people. I'd highly recommend them. And the same with the other agency that my friend works for. It's good. So anyway, what we're going to talk about though is from the buyer's perspective, and not just buyer's perspective. I mean, we're going to look at everything. You could be a renter, and actually there are more renters than there used to be. There's home ownership is down. The trend is down and continues to go down. Some people who want to look and say everything's rosy will say, "Oh yeah, that's because people want the freedom and they don't want to, they don't have." The truth is, or the other opinion is, that a lot of people just can't afford to buy a house, and you do give up some mobility in terms of, if you're in Alaska but not necessarily by choice, you want to move on someplace, maybe buying is not a good alternative. Maybe renting is more attractive, but I would still buy and then turn it into income property, because, like I say, there's more renters out there than there used to be. And in terms of investment, who cares what happens with the economy? People are always going to need to live somewhere. So the rental market is pretty stable. There's a lot of other things in the economy that will falter before places go unrented. But anyway, we're going to look at different alternatives, costs and benefits associated with renting, home buying process, costs, and strategy for selling a home. So again, different people. Probably not a whole lot of homeowners out there right now because you're young and single. That's not, you don't maybe want to be tied down. There are exceptions. So I've had students who were, one of my students, she was with the Air National Guard, so she already kind of had an income coming in and a future steady employment. She's a pilot now, but she owned a duplex out in the valley, and it was a smart move. I mean, because she's young and was going to be paying rent to somebody, and why not, capture some of that money herself and put a renter on the other side, and then eventually she'd move away from that. Anyway, then you get, single parents, young, no children, dinks, and then retired people. So anyway, most people, for myself, I mean, due to the number of animals I have, obviously you have to have a place I own, but plus just the freedom of having your own place and being able to not have to go through a landlord when things are broken, just being able to fix or modify stuff, and the tax advantages. So then retired people, sometimes, you will see people kind of scale back a little bit and move into perhaps something that doesn't involve as much yard work, if that's part of your big, huge house, or just a big, huge house in general. Some people like to simplify. It all depends, but there's different stages of life, and there's maybe different stages for housing. But like I say, the smart money, if and it's not one size fits all here, but a person, one very effective strategy is, in the not too distant future, once you kind of get squared away in a job and you can afford a down payment to do so, and you're not looking for your dream house, you're not looking for, you're looking for a rental property. Not, you're going to be buying it, but you're buying it in the mind of, I'm going to live here 3 to 5 years and then move on and to the house I really want, and this one's going to be a great income property. So, but regardless, the same things that make something a good income property make it a good property for you in most cases. Good schools, good neighborhoods, stuff like that. We were talking about this, me and one of the other guys. Anyway, he was talking about, location is very, very important in real estate, and he was talking about how, he never really understood what that meant, and then somebody told him, well, basically you want to be on the edge of things. The edge of a golf course, the edge of a lake, the edge of a stream. Something like that is that's a desirable characteristic. Also, when you're looking at a neighborhood, you don't want the nicest house in the neighborhood, because you want to be sort of middle of the road or on the lower side, because the value of your home will be driven up a little bit by your neighbors. And if you got the nicest house, the value of your home is driven down a little bit. Again, there may be unique attributes to drive you to pick a certain home, but anyway, And you gotta be, there's a lot of buyer beware. Especially with the internet, you can get yourself in all sorts of trouble. You can go, oh, this is great. I get 40 acres in Meadow Lakes, and then whatever, and then you find out the roads are maybe a little sketchy, or the drive is not what you want. And then just in the area I know pretty well, Eagle River, where I was, live, and where I was salesperson, there's a piece of property, in fact, right behind me. It's 80 acres of basically swampland. And if you touch that, you have to go through the Corps of Engineers and you basically have to buy them some more wetlands, because you're going to destroy their wetlands. So you can buy this thing, but you got to pay cash, because nobody's going to loan you money on it, because the banks know that this property is basically worthless. Because in order to, if you buy that property and you want to develop it, you have to pay a bunch of money to the Corps of Engineers, and then you have to fill it. And then you have to work with the existing neighborhoods, because neighborhoods need an entry and an exit point. This place has neither. So anyway, there's other properties. There's one way up on top that's beautiful, but it's unoccupied, and it's going to remain that way. It's the banks. Well, the bank doesn't actually own it, because the bank wouldn't loan on it, because the guy built it in an avalanche zone. You can't get a loan for it. So there's not too many people with $500,000 in cash to buy a home. That, oh, by the way, they probably can't resell, because there's not too many other cash buyers. And anyway, so there's all sorts of pitfalls, and I'm not here to, and you'll hear me talk about in insurance how, go with a simpler term and avoid the salesman, because you don't need to pay those commissions. Many times in real estate, I think it's probably pretty good advice to go with the salesperson. But again, that's just if they can provide that value added. And not all salespeople are the same. But if you do have somebody who knows what's going on, they could probably, that's their job, is to steer you away from some of these things and point out the pitfalls. But again, you get a shoddy one, they're going to charge you the same rate, and they're going to give you none of this advice. So again, buyer beware. There's other things you can do too. When you go to purchase a home, you have a choice of a home inspector, and go with an engineer. They're out there. There's professional engineers. There's people who can, assess things structurally, and they're, I don't know, maybe $200 to $400 more. But again, they can save you a lot of heartache. Not that this is all going to be war stories today, but there's a home out on Mirror Lake that was awesome. I mean, it was beautiful, and it was cheap, but it was basically sinking. When they built the Glen, at some point, this house predated it, the extension of the Glen, but it basically changed the whole water flow, and this home was sinking into, and then also there was no sewer out there, so you're strictly on septic, but the septic won't work because the water table's too high, so you have to pay the pump guys to come out once a month. So you just have to calculate kind of into your mortgage that there's an extra maybe $200, $250 to have the pump guys come every month, because you've got a holding tank, not a septic tank. So anyway, there's things like that you will stumble into. Places without water, places with crummy water, places that are, you all probably have lived up here much longer and know some of the pitfalls. But what I'm saying is, somebody selecting something off the internet will go, oh man, this is great. This is a great value, and walk into a minefield, basically. But anyway, housing alternatives. Yeah, lifestyle, choice of housing. Maybe you're a person who's, wants to live like in an urban type thing. Maybe you want to be out in the country. I was in Madrid. Madrid was 8 million people, and all my buddies, all the Italian guys, they all lived downtown. I couldn't survive in that. I wasn't brought up in an urban environment. I lived out in the sticks and had a pool and a bodega and all this other stuff, but I had to drive a half an hour to get into town. But anyway, I could see a lot of people. It was pretty fun to go down there and have that kind of young urban lifestyle. But for me, that wasn't where I was at. Traditional guidelines. 25 to 33% of take-home pay. There's all these guidelines that the banks will use, and they're meant to try and keep you out of trouble. But you will see people, violate these rules continually. But anyway, that's where you're supposed to be, so that you don't get locked into a financial situation. Opportunity costs, yeah. If you're putting down a huge down payment, there is some interest money that's lost, but also there's that fact that money that you have invested does have, you are leveraging something. And we talked about that example way back when we did time value of money, where we're talking about, controlling quite a large sum of, quite a large asset with a relatively small down payment. And then cost of commuting, yeah, less costly housing, more space. So, for the local examples, pretty much people living in the valley. I wouldn't say Girdwood is a low-cost area. People live in Girdwood for other reasons, but the valley, certainly your dollar goes quite a bit farther. Anybody commuting from the valley here? Really? That's odd. Usually there's a couple folks. They're always the ones watching the weather, especially in the night classes, where it's looking like it's about to snow. You can just see that they know they got to drive ahead of them. But you go to places like Big Lake and places like that, theoretically, you could have got there in like 40 minutes or something. Now that with Scylla, they just add stoplight after stoplight. That commute and the desirability, in my mind, of that property has gone down a little bit. But anyway, if you're thinking about going to the valley, I mean, you do have to calculate in, just like we talked about a few weeks ago about vehicles, that you're going to be burning through a vehicle probably every 3 to 5 years. And it's just a cost of doing business. Opportunity costs. So we showed in the tax thing how the interest that's paid on mortgage interest is one of the few tax deductions. No longer is interest on credit cards tax deductible, but mortgage interest is. So time and money spent to repair a lower priced home. Especially if you're not a do-it-yourselfer kind of person, if you're paying people to do everything and you buy, kind of a beater or money trap thing, yeah, that could be a problem. Time and effort you had to have your home built to personal specifications. That's kind of a dangerous thing. A lot of times people think, man, I really want to have a custom home. It's going to be, exactly what I want. But if you think about it, when they build tract homes, they're building like 1 million copies of the same home, or maybe not 1 million, but a lot of them. They're pretty well engineered. They may not be, what you want and where you want it, but in terms of weirdness with, hallways that are about, a foot wide and closets that don't, bathrooms that open up in the living room, you don't really find that so much in the tract homes. Custom homes, though, they're kind of one-offs, and sometimes you see just the goofiest things. Where from a real estate person, when you go out to show some of these custom homes, and you're just like, wow, this might have looked good on paper, but in execution, it didn't quite turn out how it should have. But anyway, yeah, if you're a renter, you're going to lose out on those tax advantages, and you're not going to have a stake in that equity if it goes. If somebody was rushing out to buy a home right now, like I say, I would be a bit nervous. Just like I wouldn't be dumping a whole bunch of money in the stock market at any one point. But with the Alaskan economy, things have got to settle a little bit, in my mind, before you kind of know where it's going. It's a more diversified economy than it was, and I wasn't here back in '84. But again, another friend of mine made a killing by buying a bunch of houses that were just dropping like rocks back then. Was anybody part of that? Parents part of that? Anyway, some people jumped in and bought all kinds of property, and then that's what the smart money does. So, renting in the process. If you are just the same as the Alaska real estate system is pretty squared away in terms of disclosure. If you're a buyer and you find something wrong with a house that is like a hidden defect, you have a fair amount of recourse. So the Alaska real estate laws kind of protect you as the buyer. And the same is true as in the renting process. There's a pamphlet that covers most of the situations you would run into in terms of a renter, with a landlord that comes barging in or claims this or does this, and you go, wow, that doesn't seem fair. Well, guess what? It's probably not fair, and it's probably spelled out in the book. And if you call them on it, that behavior will stop. So if you're a renter, make sure you take a look and you see it's under the state, real estate commission and the rest of that. But if you're a renter, talk to your landlord and say, hey, I think I'm getting jerked around here, and these are my rights. And so you can seek that pamphlet out. And I wasn't doing rental property, but I know the salespeople who were involved in that, they by law again had to provide those pamphlets to people involved in that process. So the thing with I just don't like that whole dynamic of landlords and the whole bit. I did that in college and for a little bit. And anyway, you can't modify things. You've got pets and they cause problems. You got to fix it right then. You're living in close proximity. There's just a lot of things that I wasn't for. But anyway, in terms of yourself, if you're going to be doing that, you need to really read that lease contract and see what you're signing into. And responsibility for the conditions, and you don't want any surprises when you go to move out. So, before you start moving furniture into any place, make sure you walk around and do a pretty comprehensive, inventory with a camera of carpets and everything else, because screens and, a landlord, they could even be a good fit, but they probably have multiple units and they see something on the wall and you say, yeah, that was there. Well, it could develop into an argument unless you have the documentation. And today with everything having a video camera on it or a still camera on it, you can relieve a lot of that stress. Renting a residence, compare the costs, talk to current past residents. Again, some of the stuff they've got in here is a bit naive, but some of it's useful. Again, it depends on what you want, but since you're not buying it, you may not be as concerned. If as long as you can get out of the lease, if it turns out to have some issues. But that's the beauty of renting, is that you can walk away from it. The other thing is too, not that you have the time to see it in different seasons, but you should at least be able to see it at different areas or different times of day. If you think, I like this place, it's nice and quiet. Check back at night or different times of day and just see how quiet it is. So obviously, if you're renting, easier to move. In most cases, depends what your lease is. The maintenance responsibility can be easier, but again, if it's, I don't know, I tend to work on my own stuff, and I find that it's much quicker, waiting for people to show up to fix stuff is, a lot of times you could be done with it yourself and moving on. So, I don't know, I've just been in different extremes. Again, going back to the Spanish example, oh my God, they were very laid back and, the whole siesta thing, but when your plumbing's broken, they won't get there for 3 weeks, maybe a month, Their ability to be laid back impinged upon my ability to be laid back. I was the one stressed out because all my stuff's broken, and I can't get anybody in this whole country to, take it serious. So, anyway, I wasn't the only one. Lower initial costs. Typically you got to put down first and last, though. It depends on what your situation is too, and this also gets back to your credit rating. They'll run your credit score, and if you got horrible credit, it's going to probably be a little bit more painful for you. Utilities will probably make you put down deposits rather than work with you. So keep that in mind. Disadvantages: the tax benefits you're going to lose. You can't change things up necessarily. Pets and pets are going to do stuff. Mine will destroy stuff. If they get locked in a room, they'll freak and tear something up. And that's just dogs. Horses and reindeer and chickens. It'd be chaos to be a rental place. Legal concerns of a lease. You are, depends on the lease. If it's month to month, that's good, but it can be bad if they're forcing to push you out. Security deposit, utilities, renter's insurance. Renter's insurance is something that you should have, and most, in fact, I've seen a lot of apartments now insist that people have renter's insurance. It's protects you, but do you guys, most people have renter's insurance? It's not too terribly much, $60, $100 sometimes a year, I think is all I pay. But it doesn't protect the structure or any of that, because you're just the renter, but it protects your stuff inside, which is nice. Now, with any insurance, though, if you go, oh yeah, I've got all this expensive camera equipment, so, or I've got this whatever computer that's worth, $3,000 or something, I need the renter's insurance to protect it. Be careful, because you need to specify that in the policy. You need to let them know that you've got some, special equipment that's quite valuable, guns or whatever, and you get a separate policy rider, and then it's insured. But if you have something that's quite expensive, more than normal, and you don't have special insurance for it, and you go to file a claim, they may deny it. So it's the same thing, like, for example, if you have a super whatever wedding ring that's worth, multiple thousands of dollars, you need to have that specified individually on your homeowner policy, or you'll find out you don't have coverage for it. So, legal details. So, all that is going to be on there. This data is normally not missing, but that landlord-tenant agreement, that is the pamphlet I'm talking about. So again, if you feel like you're, again, the way that the nature of this program is that they usually, tie goes to the renter. So if you're, a sensible person and what they're doing to you does not seem sensible, doesn't pass the common sense test, then you're probably right, and it's probably spelled out in this book, and they probably need to quit with that behavior. So it has to do. Has anybody ever had any abusive landlords doing stupid stuff? Yeah. What'd they do?
Well, I was just
not to dig in.
Just walking in.
Yeah.
Walking in uninvited, and just going through, and walking like they own the place.
Exactly. It's specified in the book.
I could know.
What's that?
My landlord. So we used to pay our rent in cash, and now we have to have money orders because our rent.
Oh, we talked about this. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's fun.
Oh, but that's the LE.
That's right now, though. That's our landlord right now.
Your landlord's thing?
Our landlord, yeah, they were losing our tax and money, so we had to get money orders now.
Yeah. Will they take checks?
Yeah, but we just don't use checks, so we.
Yeah.
Because I don't have a checkbook already. Like we have to go to get money orders.
Yeah. If I was you, I think you can get a checking account for pretty inexpensive. Because my only caution would be on the money order is, I guess you can keep the receipt, but most banks now, when you write a check, they'll make a copy of it, and it'll be online for like 3 years. So then when you get in this whole, well, I paid the rent, that canceled check, you can have all kinds of receipts in life, but nothing trumps a canceled check, in terms of, I got you, I paid, because here's the canceled check. I mean, that ends the argument right there. So, and paying in cash, yeah, I take cash all the time for horse panels and stuff, and it's great, but it is a little dangerous. Depends on the nature of the place too.
We also own a duplex, and we rent out half of it, and the tenant directly deposits the money into the account.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it other than checking the account, make sure it's there.
Yeah, that's beautiful too.
As opposed to
Yeah. Well,
making the landlord to contribute to the bank.
it doesn't happen very often, but I'll get somebody who's like with Alaska USA, and I've got an Alaska USA business account, and they'll say, yeah, I want to pay for it, and they'll just want to do a transfer. And so I give my account number, and it's not like they can withdraw from it, but certainly I can accept deposits from them, and they'll do it that way. But yeah, when anybody needs a check from me, especially in the lower 48, like I say, I don't write checks very often. I have to. The only thing I ever write checks for is hay for some reason, because the hay guys always, they aren't automated. But if I have to write a check in the lower 48, I'll go online and I'll set them up as a biller, and fill in the account details, and boom, send them a check. So it's plus you save a couple days. If I mail somebody a check, it takes a couple extra coming from Alaska. My bank that I'm dealing with there is in Texas, and it just fires off the check. But it looks like a certified check. They're all excited. It's not. It's just a regular check. A certified check draws the money from your account when it's written. A regular check draws the money from your account when it's cashed. So,
what's your certified check?
certified checks, they typically, there's different kinds of checks, but when you go to if somebody says, I need a certified check from you, they will draw the money from your account. Like, let's say you got, yeah, they actually will take it. Yeah. I had an issue, another horse issue with a lady, and it was a legal thing, and they needed a cashier's check, a certified check type thing. And so the lawyer held it till the thing was resolved. But yeah, when the whole legal thing got resolved, I called the bank. I said, I've noticed this money hasn't come out of the account yet. And she said, we took it the day you wrote the check, like 3 months ago. Oh yeah, I noticed that. So, anyway, not the best management skills on my point, but yeah, that's how it works, and that's why.
In your eyes, you might have thought that they got a free loan.
Well, yeah, essentially that's what's happening. Yeah, because that money is gone. But you don't write cashier's checks, certified checks, and people don't normally sit on them for that long. But this was a legal situation. The person was being definitely difficult. It was actually her lawyer, who's now my lawyer. I hired him because he's a good guy, and he wasn't all that fond of her. So he's like, yeah. So lawyers, anyway. Legal details of a lease. Where the rent's due, paid them out. So they're just getting into the details. This, there's never really squabbles on this kind of stuff. It's going to be on the lease. What you are more concerned with is what's it take to break this lease? Can I sublet from this lease? If I got to go somewhere and they won't let me out of the lease, can I have somebody else come in and assume the lease? Usually that's not permitted. But if you're, say, a military guy, is there a military clause? It means if I get deployed somewhere where, I can walk away from the lease. Or do I have to invoke some sort of, special Soldiers and Sailors Recovery Act and say, screw you, I'm breaking it anyway. But anyway, all these little details. If you're renting for the flexibility of being able to, move somewhere, if you get a new job down in the lower 48 or someplace else and you want to jump to it, make sure you retain that flexibility by not signing a lease that puts you at a disadvantage. And yeah, you got to agree on where things are going to be paid and what's part of the apartment. Now, buying a home, again, not that you shouldn't take a rental seriously, but again, as long as you can get out of it, I'm not as concerned, with the neighborhood. If the neighborhood ends up being bad, I will move. Granted, it's, a lot of hassle, but it's not like owning a home where you own it. So home ownership needs, find and evaluate the property, price of property, obtain financing. One thing that's unique that I realized too as a salesperson in real estate is I'm not somebody who would like to live in a condo from the start, but there are, so I didn't necessarily know all the rules, but I was involved in a transaction one time where a woman owned a condo and she was having a tough time selling it, and so she was just going to rent it. And the condo association said no. They said, no, we only allow a certain percentage of rentals within this complex, and we've already at that max, and so you cannot rent it. So, again, that whole freedom and flexibility of being an owner is kind of dissolved. So, if you end up in that sort of situation, or you're looking at buying a condo versus a small house, again, I'd always opt for the small house for myself. But if you're looking at a condo, see if they've got some rule in there, because that could affect you and also the desirability. If I'm looking to buy a condo, I may not be interested in buying yours if it's got, some restrictions in there that may tie my hands. So, like I say, if the market goes south, people are always going to need a place to live, but they may not always be able to buy. And so the ability for you to rent that place out in the future, I would want to retain that. Anyway, they go through these steps, determine your needs and price the property, obtain financing. Pricing the property is difficult. Alaska is a non-disclosure state. So don't worry, we're not going to get through all these slides today, but that's why we're allowed a little bit more time. Between now and next Thursday, we'll make some progress here. But Alaska is a non-disclosure state, which is a good thing. And, it's none of the government's business what you buy and sell your property for. That's why most states are disclosure states, because the taxing authority wants to know, how much money did you get for that house, and they want to, make sure that they tax you at the full amount. And I guess that's the origin of it. But anyway, because Alaska being a non-disclosure state, things like Zillow and some of these apps that price properties, they're just kind of guessing because there's not a database maintained by the government that tells what things sell for. So those prices that when you buy and sell a house, that's not, the banks know that information, but they've got restrictions in terms of sharing that. And the government agencies that typically would have that data, they're making estimates is all they're kind of doing. So, and this stuff, I mean, you can see why other places are disclosure places. Again, it seems like I'm focusing on Spain today, but this property I owned in Spain, it was flat scary because in Spain they have this concept, they call it black money. It's where you sell your house for whatever price at the government level, because the government, they tax you on every transaction. It's a value-added tax. And so people will sell their house for, say, $400,000, but they'll claim that they sold it for $300,000, so they don't have to pay as much tax. And so the buyer and seller are both up for it because they don't want to have to pay this excess tax. But it's this kind of institutionalized fraud that's become part of that country, just the way they operate. It's been long enough now. It's been more than 7 years, so. And I paid my taxes, and I've left it off on the as a non-Spanish resident. I can't be the one to go to jail for this, but we're at Caja Madrid, the biggest bank in Spain on Paseo Castellano, a big, huge, beautiful bank with these big leaning towers and with a notar. He's a lawyer, and he's like, I must go get some coffee. And he walks out of the room, and his assistant comes walking in with an envelope full of what they call bin Ladens, the 500 euro notes. Because there's the big in Europe, the bills, it's kind of cool. Like a €5 is real small, 10 euro a little bigger. And so if you happen to be blind or visually impaired or whatever you want to call it, you can figure out what you're looking at, and it's easy. But so the 500 euro notes they're like a beach blanket, they're huge. So she walks in with these bin Ladens and hands her this envelope. These are for you. And that was the black money, the difference between the stated price on the contracts and then these other contracts that existed. I'm just like, how do you guys function? I mean, this was just a strange thing. I mean, now I'm left with this stack of a fair amount of money walking around Madrid, trying to get back to my beater car to get to a bank and get rid of this stuff. And anyway, but that's just the way they do it. And it's weird. So in Alaska, they don't have those rules because there's no incentive to lie, because you don't have to state anywhere. It's just the rules of the road. So other states, though, they will track those, and I'm not saying other states do that kind of fraud. Spain's a unique place. In the States, you will go to jail doing that kind of stuff. Anyway, other reasons, benefits of home ownership, the American dream. They're trying to, there's like the many smaller homes kind of movement, and what do they call them? Anyway, tiny homes, and other people are moving away from perhaps owning, and I don't know. I think it's driven more by the economics. Financial benefits, we talked about over and over again about the taxes and mortgage interest that you can deduct. Potential for it to be a great investment for you in building equity. The problem with, in retirement, if you are not an owner of a home, you've got to squirrel away a fair amount more money, because if you're going to be renting for life, for most of us, the enjoyable thing of retirement is that with a 30-year mortgage, you should be owning your home by that point and not paying rent. If you're going to be a renter into the retirement years, you may be working into retirement years or still have something. So anyway, it's just going to change your lifestyle. The drawbacks, things can go up and down. You got to get a loan, obviously. Property values can go down. But for people in kind of your age group, they're not as liquid as you would imagine, and limited mobility. There's people all over North Dakota, places like that, where things sprung up because of the oil. They can't, necessarily move right now, and then there were people in Ohio and places like that when the economy wasn't doing well there, but it was doing great in the Dakotas, and they couldn't move over there for that window to take advantage of that because they were, locked into their mortgage. So it can happen. Higher living costs, you'll walk into a place like Lowe's or Home Depot and just, and it's just gone. But if that's what you enjoy, I mean, a lot of people enjoy fixing their place up, but there's more costs involved with it. Rising real estate taxes, I would not be concerned about that, because they're going to rise. If taxes are raising, they're going to raise on property taxes across the board, right, including rental properties. And if I'm the landlord and property taxes go up, I'm raising your rent. So by being a renter, you're not shielded from property tax increases. You're just going to pay his taxes for him. Different types of homes. So we talked about this, or haven't talked about it, but you're kind of aware of it. Single family, duplexes, townhomes, kind of stuff, multiple unit, condominiums, and cooperative housing. So the key thing with condominiums is you got to know what you're buying. You buy the condo, right? But you buy from basically the paint inside. You don't even own the wall. You only own to the paint layer. So if it's in the structure of the building, that's not yours. And if it's the grounds or anything else, that's not yours either. You just from the paint inside, carpet as well if you own. But it's not a building structure, but really a form of ownership, because you can have the same type of things in their apartments. They're all rentals. But again, the one thing that the authors don't mention that I thought was kind of unique was this bit about the inability to determine whether you can rent or not based upon the percentage. And I've been told that's quite common here. And that is not, I always want kind of an out, a plan B, in case everything goes bad. Okay, I'll just make it a rental. Well, if you've got to, whatever. It just makes the situation more difficult. Cooperative housing, this is more complex and not as common. Anybody ever been involved in co-op kind of housing? I know they're putting some stuff together. I think Raven's Roost is a co-op kind of thing. But a nonprofit organizations, members share, rent a unit in a building with multiple units. I don't know. Anything with a committee, I'm pretty scared of. I'm not. Anyway, but it's a way of working it. It's it can look like an apartment, it can look like a condo, it can look like a cooperative, but really what you're talking, the building is not what defines those. It's the ownership style, and cooperative is where you own that property as well. Manufactured homes. The big downside with it depends. Mobile homes is kind of a pejorative term, but usually not a good investment, and it's reflected also in the lending rates that you can get for it. A lot of times you can't get a loan for a mobile home, or if you do, the rates are going to be a bit higher. So maybe the cost is cheaper, but if the interest rate's higher, then you kind of lost it. And then also, location wise, now there are some kind of mobile home communities that are nice and out on golf courses, and there are some homes that are maybe a combo kind of thing where they're, some of the home is stick built. That's what they've been building out of 2x4s and stuff, and it's got some, manufactured elements to it. That's not a bad way to go. But the mass production, keeps the cost lower. So you're probably going to see more of that. You're probably going to see more of these hybrids. You don't see everything like. I had the unfortunate privilege of living in a place in North Carolina that was like the mobile home capital of the world, or at least the U.S., probably the world, I'm sure. It was just nasty. But anyway, they had mobile homes there that, 2-story mobile homes and things like that. So.
But with the mobile home, do you have tax write-offs like you would with a house?
Depends how it's done. A lot of times you rent or lease the property that's sitting on, and your tax write-off is tied to. I never sold a mobile home, but I know in like other states you even have to like maintain a registration on the home, like it's a with a license plate type thing. So there wouldn't be a write-off on that. And if you're renting the property that it's sitting on, no, you wouldn't get that. So generally, mobile homes, well, they're lumped with the manufactured and mobile homes, but.
Say you own a piece of property and you put a mobile home.
Oh yeah, you'd be good to go then. Yeah, that would be fine. That would be fine. And
while you're building your own home.
yeah, exactly. You know, and there was a student, and this was in a different class. This was a 166 class, small business class, but this guy had this concept where he had identified some property out in the valley, and he was working with a company down in Seattle, and they built basically small tract homes that were more in the manufactured home sense, and they looked more or less like a stick-built home, because that's the key. You know, manufactured homes usually don't even have any eaves to them. You know, there's no overhang, and they just look like a box. But these ones are actually aesthetically a little bit better, and they could plop them down like in a matter of, you know, they send the parts up, and you just knock it together in a matter of weeks, and it's up and running rental. And he was going to put like 4 per acre of this thing, and so it wasn't going to look like a mobile home park. That's the big detractor, is if it starts to resemble, you know, again, if the key thing in real estate is location, you know, and mobile home parks are not ideally, but trend not to be good locations, let's just say that. But if you put it out in a more rural setting, in a nice neighborhood, you know, but it's also dependent upon zoning. You know, if you went to, you know, the Muni here in Anchorage and said, yeah, I want to put a mobile home on this piece of property, they're like, whoa, we've got, you know, zoning and this. Out in the valley, you could probably do it. Someplace outside in the Muni, it's kind of weird from a planning perspective. Eagle River, for example, is a land use area, so it's not as tightly controlled. You might be able to do it, but there's covenants and restrictions. Anytime you're buying a home, and this is kind of probably a good transition, there's going to be, CCRs, covenants. No, anyway, restrictions is the last part, but covenants and restrictions, I'll figure out what the other ones are. But anytime somebody's buying a home, you got to give them the CCRs to show them what they're basically up against. And you'll get in certain neighborhoods here, in Anchorage, for example, where the developer wants to build this thing fairly quick, doesn't want to wait for the city to come in and put in the roads, so he'll build the roads and basically pass on the cost to the home buyers. But now that homeowners association owns the roads, and so they get a little break on their property taxes because, you know, the city throws them a small bone in terms of not charging them the full rate, but the homeowners association is responsible for road maintenance, plowing, stuff like that. So anyway, it makes things more complex. And again, I don't like that whole committee where, you know, you get some whatever. I'm not a fan of homeowners associations, HOAs. A buddy of mine, real world out there, McMansions out in Eagle River. You may know. I mean, what in your mind would make you think that this is? Does anybody live in, what is it, Eagle Crest or Eagle Point? Anybody know this? Eagle River? Okay, let me describe. Geographically, you've got a landfill on one side, a men's prison, or the women's prison on the other side, and the highway, and then the big high school. Anyway, right back in there's all these McMansions. And they're beautiful homes, but they're, you know, for me, it's not Alaska, because they're, you know, you're moving to Alaska to, at least in my mind, they're kind of maybe spread out and not, you know, fuss with yard work and the rest of that. Well, these guys, a friend of mine, basically their tree counter. He's got some other title, but in his homeowners association, he has to go around and make sure everybody has 3 trees per lot. And if a moose comes in and eats your tree, you got to get busy and go get another tree, or else you get a fine. You know, and if your trailer happens to be parked at the road beyond a certain month, again, you know, you get I just, in Germany, in this case, that's where those examples come up, where, you know, Germany, 9:30 in the morning, the street needs to be cleared of all snow. Well, it's like, but horse, it's still snowing. And no, 9:30, you know, because he was German. I'm like, I'm going to let it snow a little bit more. I'll get out there in a few minutes. And he completely did not understand that. But that's because they're rules. Yes?
So where does the revenue from these tickets go? Just to the homeowners association, and then they do what with it?
The tickets?
Yeah, like if you
Oh.
got a ticket or something.
Yeah, it goes into their general fund because they have common areas They maintain their own park. Yeah, it's not a city park. They have their own shrubbery, and they probably have their own barbecues and things like that.
Okay, so
But you need to know, when you're a homeowner, you want to get a copy of those CCRs, the covenants and restrictions. Anyway, I'll figure out what that other C is. And you need to see what the HOA situation is, the homeowners association, because they can oftentimes have dues that can be. One of my properties in Florida, I pay $150 or something a month. I mean that's kind of like a chunk of rent to me. Yes.
So conceivably, you could look at that area two ways. If a women's prison and a landfill is not a problem for you and you don't need a bunch of space, that'd be a cheaper place to live.
Well, but that's not the nature of this community. This is like probably some of the richer homes in Eagle River, which is
you're looking for a rich place. Say you want to live above your means a little bit.
Oh yeah.
Am I missing the point?
As long as it's factored into the price. Not that this thing's actually being recorded, which is unfortunate. But I've got a neighbor that one of the reasons I was kind of drawn to the home I've got is because it's on the end of the street, and the guy next to me, he's the nicest guy in the world, but man, he has got every Alaskan toy in his yard, and it's in different stages of repair. And so I'm sure most people just would look at this house and go, "Oh my God!" Well, I'm like going, that's why this is a steal, because nobody wants to borrow this, and nothing personal, but the guy lives on the slope. He could move, he could whatever, and if that happens, the property value is going to go up because or he could just clean his yard, But it will change things. But what you got to make sure, and this gets back into this pricing business, because if you get an appraisal for something, the appraisal people, they work in pretty tight. They're pretty locked at the hip with the mortgage people. Appraisals you don't often see coming lower than the loan amount, and they use these things called comparable sales in the area, but sometimes they kind of work those comps, and it's not having been in that business, I do not take it as validation that I'm getting a good deal because the appraisal came in for whatever price. But yeah, I mean, you might look at situations like that, but again, you have to, when you're buying a home, it's like anything else. You buy it kind of with the idea of selling it. If I was an average seller, would this appeal to me? Or would the prison, and again, most people, I don't even know if they know this when they move in, that, that prison is back there, and it's not a whatever, it doesn't have towers and the rest of that. It seems pretty sedate. You never hear of any problems back there. The smell of the landfill seems to be getting a little worse, but it's actually on the other side of the highway. But yeah, if it's factored into the price, I'm kind of all for it, But if I'm paying top dollar and I've got some mitigating things, I definitely want to know. I mean, there's all sorts of factors, and again, this kind of gets into why you might want to use a salesperson or do a whole lot of research yourself. And the for sale by owner thing is a lot of times that is a minefield in its own that you don't even know about till you go to sell the home, because you'll buy it from somebody, and then when you go to sell the home, they'll go, well, where's this document? Where was the well and septic check? Where was this done? And you go, we didn't do that last time. Well, guess what? You got to do it this time, and you got to address the problems that you didn't find last time. So that can be a real problem. So anyway, I don't think I really got to your question, though, right?
You did.
Okay.
The answer is factored into the price.
Yeah. If it's reflected in the price, that's the issue, But you guys have the advantage. If you're relocating, if you say you get a job and you're moving to Seattle and you're coming in brand new, my advice is you better get an agent, a salesperson, because I'm sure there's minefields down there too. You guys know in Alaska, you're going to go, oh, wait a minute, literally within a mile of my house, there's homes that basically don't get water, and we're not on city water, so you need a well. And the ones up on the hill, it's drier, and they only get about 1.5 gallons a minute, which is not enough. So they need a big holding tank to hold their water. I'm down in the flats. I get like 5 gallons. That's where they just stop measuring. I've got all the water I need, especially now. Yeah, there's a lot that goes into housing. But housing is, it's such a, housing's so important because it's such a huge investment, and it's where you're going to spend your time. I mean, you want to be certainly careful on this, but you know, you buy things, you don't want to make it an emotional thing, and that was another reason that I kind of stepped back from real estate, because we're talking, you know, several thousands of hundreds of thousands of dollars, and people are talking to me about drapes and the paint, and I'm like, wait a minute, you know, your focus, you know, you can fix that, you can change that. What you can't change is the fact that, you know, your backyard is falling away, or the structure is not sound, or this is a, you know, not a pleasant neighborhood. You need to know, and oh, but we really like it. But the point is, will the next guy like it? Because you got to sell this at some point. Or anyway, that's just how you got to look at it.
So can you have more than one agent working for you, or is that
Dual
against
agent?
the law, or-
No, there's another. There's a thing called dual agency, but that's a different thing. That's on the agent's behalf. Usually there'll be a you'll sign into some sort of agreement with your salesperson, and it'll be like an exclusive thing. But there's all sorts of fuzzy things, and it you know.
Well, they have their own personal agenda as well.
Yeah. But if you contact somebody, and if you go to a property with an agent, for example, with a salesperson, and then you decide you don't like this guy, but you go back and you go to the guy, hey, will you just sell it to me direct? That salesperson come back to you and say, hey, wait a minute, I showed it to you. You know, I've got records. You're going to owe me some money. But if you've got multiple people showing you homes, I would be up front with them. But you know what? The guys are probably not going to give you as much attention, knowing that you're kind of a risk. You know, there was one deal I worked out for a guy to buy some property. He's like, I don't know how to do this, and you know, it's this complex deal. The guy won't have this money for whatever, and how do we work this out? And so I talked to some old head, salespeople. I go, that's easy. What you do is you write up the contract now, everybody signs it, and you delay the closing for 9 months. There's no problem. It's done all the time. So I call up the guy and I go, hey, this is what we're going to do. And the guy goes, oh, that's a great idea. But you know what? I don't really want to pay your 6% commission, so I'm just going to go to the bank and work that out on my own. It's like, and I had nothing. And I could have fought this thing legally, but as a salesperson, I'm going to lose. So I just kind of stepped back from it. But it's stories like that over and over again of salespeople that just get, it's a cutthroat business, because you can make. We're almost running out of time here, but you can make. There's people making $300,000 a year as salespeople that probably don't even have a degree. And where else are they going to get that kind of money doing what they're doing? So if you get in a situation where their commission's at risk, you talk about, I would rather take on this bull reindeer and rut than an agent that thinks I'm, it's just vicious. So anyway, that's not the sort of people I want to be working with in my life. But there are some people who do very, very well. But if the real estate business went south, they don't have a whole lot of options. So if they feel that they're in a threatened position, they're like a caged animal. And I hear the stories over and over again from friends of mine who are still in the business, and I'm like, why do you do it, man? It's just not worth it. So anyway, we'll talk more about this next Thursday, and I'll send you send you an announcement on it.